And just the walkability.
All right, I'm going to call this December 14th, 2023 meeting of the Lexington Planning Commission to order at the Rockbridge County Administrative Offices with full attendance by the commission. Next order of business will be the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add or a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I second the motion.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. Next would be the approval of minutes from the November 9th meeting. Excellent summary of a roundabout conversation at points. So thank you. Is anything that needs to be added, corrected, emphasized? And do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. Seems to be unanimous. Number 4 on the agenda is citizens' comments on matters not on the agenda this evening. And that will be enough time to get to the podium. We will close that citizens' comments section and move on to our first order of new business, which is an entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness application by James Larner for exterior improvements in 449 and 453 East Nelson Street and new signage at 449 East Nelson Street, tax map 30-1-9, owned by James Larner. And we will begin with a staff report.
Good evening to you all. It appears we do not have an applicant. We do have a fairly new owner of the shopping center. And sometime in the middle of the summer, early summer, there were some improvements made there without going through or requesting a certificate of appropriateness in the entrance corridor. We do now have an application largely complete. That this is a request for COA for a new sign and exterior improvements for the Rockbridge Square Shopping Center. We are in the entrance corridor and in the C2 zoning district. And the request is for the approval of the exterior improvements made to the building's facade, as well as a new sign for the pack and mail business. The applicant is requesting a light gray stripe. So if we actually might be helpful just to flip over to the next page. There were boards, I presume cedar, I'm not sure what material exactly, at a 45-degree angle over the top of this storefront, which is much more of a 60s design. That was all removed. They found the brick underneath to be in fairly good condition and decided to paint it. The light gray stripe that you see there, when they were first coming in and trying to figure out what the design for the sign was going to be, they wanted a wall sign for pack and mail. We have a new owner for that business as well. And as you can tell just by the photograph there, the under new management banner doesn't really fit in well. So if you have a standard sign that's rectangular in size, it's going to cover part of the charcoal and part of the light gray. And how does that work? So we were able to negotiate, and they will be expanding that light gray stripe. They didn't indicate higher or lower or both, but that will be expanded to 39 inches, if I remember correctly. And then the sign will more clearly fit into that band area, which will make a little bit more sense. It'll be very much in keeping with the sign to the right for the ABC store, where you see a band sort of color that's separate from the cornice and sort of that little band right across the front of the or top of the door. So that will get increased, and it'll make a little bit more sense, in my opinion, for the sign itself. So it is a request for expanding that light gray stripe, as well as a sign for pack and mail in peacock blue, light blue, and pale red on a white background with a black border. The sign will not be eliminated, and we do have additional sign details in the application. As with all of your entrance corridor requests, we do include for you the criteria. So you see the signage criteria on page 9 or page 3 of 4. And those sign criteria are fairly generic. There's not too much detail there. The first one, as an example, reflects a consistent style and specifies the size and color scheme for the proposed signage. The second one, materials in the signs and their support structure should reflect the building served by the sign, and colors should be harmonious with the building with which they serve. is the third one. And then same for the architectural, so that would apply more to the painting because that's all truly the architectural items that were addressed with this particular request. We didn't get the best submittal. So on page 17 of your packet, you see a representation of what the pack and mail sign will be. And that's all I have for a presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Arnie, would they, so this doesn't have anything to do with the painting, the repainting of those two storefronts. They wouldn't have needed permission for that.
Well, actually, I didn't cover that, but that's part of the request here. And
Do you mean that they're asking retroactively for permission?
they've made the improvements and they're not just asking for the sign, they're asking for permission retroactively for the improvements already made and an adjustment to those by increasing the gray stripes. So maybe I focus too much on that, but yes, they are also asking for the improvements that have already been made.
And you said there was a new, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and they have not, we don't know how large this current gray stripe is. Correct? With the,
I estimated it being out there by counting bricks, somewhere around the 1'6" or 1'8" is the current height of that gray stripe.
so 18 inches roughly. No, yes.
Roughly. Yeah.
So we're talking about expanding it by,
Double.
it'll be more than double that.
And again, I don't have a good sense of if the gray stripe is getting taller, on the upper end and the lower end, if it's all just on increasing on the upper side and not the lower side. So you do have the ability to ask for more information if you desire, or if you desire more information.
And you said there's a new owner of the shop of the whole row of buildings, the whole strip mall there.
Correct. But also have to be clear that that does not include, as you'll see on the first page of this report, which is page 7 overall, the outline includes Schul's, Dollar General, everything, but not Cookout. Cookout was parceled out at some point in the past. Cookout wanted to be on their own property.
Okay. Any other questions for Arnie?
Does, in looking at the picture, Arnie, does the dark gray match what the auto parts store has? Is that what I'm seeing, or is that?
Oh. Well, the Valley Pond is the other gray that
Valley
you
Pond,
see
sorry.
in
Sorry.
there. I
It's
didn't-
tricorn black, but it's very similar. Yeah.
At least in the photograph, it appears pretty similar. I didn't look specifically for that to see how well they matched up.
It's darker.
Mhm.
So the stripe that they expand is going to expand on both of these the building.
Right.
For the whole.
Right.
Okay.
The request is for both the old Ugly Doug's location and the storefront that contains the pack and mail
Got it.
storefront.
And we don't know where they want to put the sign in relation to that, as you said. Would
I
we
believe
we
it's within
presume?
the gray stripe, but we don't know how the gray stripe is increasing, if it's all increasing up, all
Right.
increasing down, or a little bit of both.
Right. Well, I mean, they'll put the sign inside there, presumably. If it's 39 inches and the sign is 30 inches high, it'll somewhere be in the middle of it where they're.
Oh, you meant maybe,
I mean, above it or below it. In other words, the sign will go inside that lighter stripe is the idea.
that's the intent, yes.
And could we or could we approve it conditionally, saying that it be centered over the, I don't know, over the building, over that section of the building that it contains that store? I just, I would be concerned, for example, if they placed it directly over the door, that it would,
Hmm.
it's hard to know without seeing where, like on this building, where the sign would go.
Yep.
And is there going to be, I assume that there will be another sign for this other store once it opens.
That's a good assumption. We actually just had a set of plans submitted today for another restaurant in the old Ugly Doug's location. about the sign and the specific location, you really have two choices, perhaps. One is to get them to submit something that more accurately depicts what they want,
Mhm.
how the gray stripe, where the sign will specifically be located above that storefront. Or you can, as you just mentioned, make a recommendation. Or actually, this isn't a recommendation. You're actually making a decision that says move for approval as long as contingent on the sign being centered on the storefront.
That's what it says on,
Or is it-
yeah, it's
Okay.
on page
Which page is that said on, Leslie?
16,
On page
16.
16.
the last
That
sentence.
seems to be what would be common sense and logical.
Well, it says it'll be, centered with respect to the front facade. Yeah.
Of the packed
Okay.
house
Yep.
space.
Good. Thanks.
But,
Good eye.
but
Thank
the
you.
other question, going back to, so in essence, the new, the widened gray stripe, as I understand it, would be 30, at least 30 inches wide now. And going back to,
39.
well, the sign is 30 inches.
Right. And the stripe would
Or
be
they'll be
30 to 39
requesting
inches
39.
high. Right.
So, and I'm assuming, and from looking at the picture, that the gray stripe would go up and across
Mm.
to match the ABC store. I mean, in a way, it's it's beginning to try to say we have a uniform facade here. So, which is. But how do we, is there a way to ask for clarification or just hope for the best?
You definitely have the ability, if you need more specific information, you could table this until your next meeting and request that the applicant provides you, and then just be specific on what it is that you need.
So, are there other factual kind of detailed questions for Arnie? So we don't start getting into discussion too much right now. Okay, so then do we have, you said there's no one is here for an applicant statement? Okay. And then, so then we'll ask if there's public comment. Open that up. Seems to be none. We'll close that. So now we can get into really the discussion of it. We can still ask Arnie questions if another detail
Right.
comes up, but what's your sense?
I'm actually feeling like just in terms of I would really like to see what their plan is before saying yes, go right ahead. And I mean, I would like to see a drawing, I guess, that shows where the stripe is, where the sign is, and have it be straight. Like, I mean, if it's a photograph, that's okay, as long as it's straight on and you can see what you're looking at. So that would be my.
That's a good point. And I also think what John said about, if it's done right, it could, I think,
Mhm.
John, you were saying, could start to move that stretch of 1, 2, 3, 4 stores to looking a little more uniform.
Yep.
I think in the past we've had this issue, and since it's not new construction where we can't say, well, you have to have it be uniform. It's not, but there's an opportunity for it to make it slightly more coherent. I think with the coloring, with the ABC store having the kind of blue and red, and this sign's going to be that.
Mhm.
So I think we want to make sure see that we get it right. I think, but what do others?
It's mostly about the gray stripe, where exactly the gray stripe will be.
Yeah, and then where the sign will be in relation to that, right? And where,
Does
but
that-
yeah, I think mostly the gray stripe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's
Yep.
fine to ask for more.
yeah. I mean, I think,
clarification.
as Arnie said, it's not as complete an application as you would like and maybe are accustomed to getting. And I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to say, well, we'd really like to have a good idea what this is going to look like.
And the front door's blue and will stay blue. Or no, sorry, that's not the door. That's blue.
Right, yeah, that's under the front window.
Are you talking about the reflection perhaps?
That
that's
must be
in?
the real
Okay,
reflection.
I didn't
yeah.
realize that until.
By the way, all the things in the window there, those are pretty much all just flyers, kind of advertising flyers. They're not strictly speaking signs for the shop. And we don't really have rules on putting up flyers for
So
community events, but
correct. That's not sort of the commercial message that
But are these commercial signs that are up there or?
for the most part, this store owner took over the store. And as far as I know, most of those signs were already there, except for the U-Haul signs. And we're working with him about the U-Haul operation that was started without permission
Mhm.
and is now no longer in operation, but perhaps the signs are still in the window.
Right, because it looks like there's an awful lot of signs in
Oh, yeah.
that window
Yeah.
and that would not seem to fit code, right?
Right. What is the code for signage in windows like this?
20%, the lesser of 20% of the window area or 6 square feet. So I presume here they're gonna have more than enough window area. So 6 square feet would be the total.
I see about 7 or 8 square feet in there. All right, so do we need we need a motion or just a recommendation to say we're gonna how do we phrase this? Where's Matt? Matt would know.
Luckily, this isn't an advertised item, so it's
Okay.
perhaps not as much of a stickler for
Okay.
the advertising. Because we didn't have to do an ad
Right, okay.
in the paper. But yes, if you could do a motion
Okay.
and in the motion include specifically a deferral, maybe to the next meeting or to the next date when the applicant can provide you with information and indicate specifically what it is that's desired.
Take a stab at that.
Okay. Uh,
If that's okay with everyone else, everyone ready to hear
Yeah,
a motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Okay,
Second.
I move that we table the discussion of this request in this application until the applicant can provide us with information and visual a visual diagram of where or of the size of the that shows where the light gray stripe will be on the building. Is that
And the placement of the sign.
and that also shows the placement of the sign on that stripe.
Second. You need a second?
Yeah, we need a second. Let's make sure we are in case find that sufficient. They'll do the job. Okay. So we got a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion on it? Anyone? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, so we'll be coming back to that at a meeting in the near future. Hopefully the sooner the better for them. At this point, we will move on to our second order of new business, which is a conditional use permit 2024-01, which is an application by Hugh Latimer of Washington University for approval of a conditional use permit to allow Student Health Center to be located on East Denny Circle on a portion of the 103-acre parcel tax map number NM19 owned by Washington University. And before we move on with this, I think we've got to have a couple, two tree, as we say in Philadelphia, recusals. And so would anyone like to start? Should I be the last one to do mine before I move as chair and hand it over?
Start it off.
Sure. I just read the formal conflict disclosure into the record.
That's preferable, yes.
Okay. In accordance with Virginia Code 2.2.31112A and 3115F, I declare that I have a personal interest in the City of Lexington Planning Commission's consideration of Washington and Lee University's conditional use permit application for the Lindley Center for Student Wellness, one that disqualifies me from participating in the transaction. My personal interest relates to my employment with Washington and Lee University, 204 West Washington Street, Lexington, Virginia, 24450. The transaction at issue relates to the real estate located on tax map number NM19. My personal interest requires my disqualification because the transaction has applications solely to the business or property in which I have a personal interest.
I also have a personal interest, but my personal interest relates to my husband's employment with Washington and Lee.
I'm going to read a separate statement because mine's a little bit different. In accordance with Virginia Code 2.2-311A and 3115F, I declare that I have a personal interest in the City of Lexington Planning Commission's consideration of Washington University's conditional use permit application for the Lindley Center for Student Wellness to be located on tax map number NM19. My personal interest relates to my spouse's employment with Washington University, my personal interest requires my disqualification from participating in the transaction. Mine's a little different because I don't agree with the city attorney's interpretation of the law. So I'll give you that so you can see that. So at this point, we will all step aside. I think we're allowed to stay in the room.
It's preferable to be off the dais,
Off the dais, and we'll keep our mouths shut and
no hands.
no hand signals. And just Shannon actually move over to the chair. Can she do it from whatever she prefers?
I just,
That's perfectly
If you'd
fine.
like,
I'll just,
you're allowed to.
that's
No-
okay.
No hand signals, Pat.
Okay. Okay, so we will take up item B under new business, CUP 2024-01, an application by Hugh Latimer of Washington Lee University for approval of a conditional use permit to allow a student health center to be located on East Denny Circle on a portion of the 103 acre parcel, tax map number NM19, owned by Washington Lee University. And we'll start with the staff report.
I will read the overview into the record. The site selected for the proposed Lindley Center for Student Wellness is currently an undeveloped area on the WNL campus on the west side of East Denny Circle, across from the Woods Creek Apartments. Medically related facilities such as the proposed Lindley Center for Student Wellness are a permitted use in the institutional district, and permitted uses that have not been approved as part of a master plan require a conditional use permit. The proposed Lindley Center for Student Wellness was not included in the WNL campus master plan approved on June 16th, 2022, and the applicant therefore requests a conditional use permit to allow a medically related facility along East Denny Circle. On the location map, you see the star there to indicate the general site that's being proposed. You'll notice that's beside the tennis courts, across from the Woods Creek Apartments, and very close proximity to the football field, and just off the photograph there is the law school. On the next page, you see a sort of zoomed out version to give you a better sense of where this is. You know, the parcel is the main parcel for WNL NM19 at 204 West Washington. That's the outline that you see there in blue, or that entire footprint. They do own other parcels, so their campus is bigger than that, than what you see there. But that just gives you a better indication of how centrally located this particular site is. The photograph of the bottom may not show you a whole lot, but that building on the left-hand side is, I believe, a bathroom type facility for the tennis courts, which are just off the photograph to the left. As with all of, or I should start with the permitted uses in the institutional district. I have underlined there that the medically related facilities are one of the listed permitted uses for the institutional district. And when, again, those are not included in the master plan, they shall require a conditional use permit, which is what is being requested. I also included there section 420-7.5, the area and bulk regulations. That was really included when there was an indication that additional height was requested, but that has now been withdrawn. So you would not have noticed that in your application or in your staff report. But there was initially a request for additional height above the 45 feet that's allowed in the underlying zone district. One thing that I learned, or maybe set in a little bit better for me this go around, is that when there are standards that are requested above and beyond what's allowed in the underlying zoning district, you can't do that through a conditional use permit. You have to do that through a campus master plan update. This is a conditional use permit. They are sticking with the underlying zoning district standards, which includes a 45-foot height maximum. Going on to the bottom of page 21 of your packet, those are the conditions that you see for every conditional use permit. So these are your criteria for deciding whether or not this conditional use permit is appropriate or is not appropriate. I'm not going to read those into the record. You see those A, B, C, and D, and then there are also certain parts of number 3, sort of in the middle of that say, as well as any other reasonable land use and zoning considerations. So it's fairly open-ended, and you have a good bit of discretion And I'd also like to reiterate that we are solely focusing on the use. It is a medically related facility. We will get to site plan at the next stage. You will undoubtedly have questions on sort of how this is located on the campus, but this is really not a site plan. We're not counting parking spaces yet. We're just talking about the use. Staff also notes that if there are any conditions are deemed necessary in the public interest, because this is a conditional use permit, you do have the ability to put conditions on or recommend conditions with an approval. Those conditions must be reasonably and proportionally related to the impacts resulting from the proposed medically related facilities use. Staff did not recommend any conditions in this case, mainly because we felt that this is so centrally located on the campus that it really wouldn't create any impacts beyond WNL itself that would create a need for conditions. That's all I have for a staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Arnie?
Arnie, just one, just to understand why, and I'm not questioning it, but just to understand why the choice of a conditional use permit versus amendment to the master plan.
That's their right. In other words, the use can be added to the campus through either conditional use permit or a change to the campus master plan. Now, if you advertise the campus master plan, you in theory open up the entire thing for some sort of review and consideration. But I will have to perhaps stress or just reiterate that if they had requested or still needed the additional height, if they wanted to go above the 45 feet, that could not have been accomplished with a conditional use permit and only could have been accomplished through a campus master plan update. That's the only distinction.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to the applicant statement. I'll invite you to come up and state your name and address.
Latimer, Washington University, Roanoke, Virginia.
Mhm.
Some people might remember the previous Student Health Center was located in Davis Hall, which was demolished in order to make room for the new Williams building. And in order, we planned originally early on to rebuild within the new Williams building, the Student Health Center, with the counseling center moved over from Early Fielding. But both the later planning of the Williams building used for the business school and the needs of the counseling center, and to a lesser degree, the health center, it got too big for the site. And so that we needed to find a new home for the student health center. We still were committed to joining the health center and the counseling center together in a facility in the long run. So we needed a temporary location for the student health center as Davis was going to be demolished. The old ROTC building that then became the development building, that's sort of a Butler type building that's located between the library and the science center on the downhill side. Everybody's kind of, where's that? But it's down in there. That was a suitable location. We moved a portion of our development staff out of that building to what had been earlier called the esports theme house, which earlier than that, so I forget the name of the fraternity. Beta Theta Pi. Thank you very much. Moved development there. That freed up that building, so we created a temporary health center down there on General's Way, which has worked quite well, but it doesn't have space for the counseling center. And additionally, as we move forward with development of the campus plan, we want to create another pedestrian bridge leading from the law school lawn area across Woods Creek and winding up roughly at the rear of the library. This building will be in the way. So we needed a new home for both. And what was one of the things that was driving a location for us is the first year students use both the health center and the counseling center more than any other student population. And additionally, you have to have convenient ease of access for ambulance service. So what this site basically fit the bill for both being convenient to the first year students and certainly at easy ambulance service on East Denny Drive. So we went with that plan. The site is a little unusual. We were able to build into the bank of a hill, if you will, and our findings didn't include any rock, and it seemed like a very practical solution. So that it gives us the ability to have an entry at the upper floor, which is the health center portion, from the law school lawn, convenient to upper division housing coming across, and also at the lower level, which is the counseling area, having direct access from East Denny Circle's sidewalks. There's an elevator in the building that gets you up or down from either floor. And from other accessibility provisions, the sidewalk across the street on Denny goes right by the elevator from the parking deck. So for those accessibility needs, this also is convenient and efficient for us. Let's see, a couple other impacts. We have a trash enclosure at roughly the north end of where this building's service yard will be. That will have to be relocated. The existing one, we'll move it down into the areaway beside our building, and we'll replicate that with the same type of trash screening enclosure that we've had before. As Arnie said, the sort of golf course type bathroom facility that was served by the tennis courts, that will go away, be on the site. They can come use the restrooms. There'll be plenty of restrooms in this building, as you might understand. What happened, we ran into some difficulties with this pricing. Everybody knows there's a lot of construction inflation these days. So this summer we had to take a little bit of a hiatus to shrink the building to get it within budget. When we did that, we were able to come up with a design where we were able to fit all the mechanical and electrical equipment in the lower level in the back hillside area. That then gave us the ability to avoid putting mechanical equipment in the attic. And that gave us the ability to basically pull the roof down to keep it within the 45-foot height. There was a question that came in about the ambulance service and stretchers. And if you turn to the sheet that has the site plan, on the right side of the sheet, if you will, is the areaway. Areaway right there. That is where an ambulance will back into the areaway, and it doesn't show terribly clearly in this drawing, but at the back part, there's a door that goes directly into the first floor lobby, which is right beside the elevator. And that's how people will be in stretchers would be brought in. Additionally, if for some reason the areaway is blocked somehow and an ambulance has to discharge at the street, the route from the street through that areaway to the back door is unencumbered by any curbs or whatever, and it has a 7% slope, which is EMS people can readily handle that. That was concern from the police department. Any other questions regarding the site?
Anybody have questions for Mr. Latimer?
not, excuse me, Hugh, thank you very much. And if I was sick, I'd like to come to this building. One question is just to clarify, the previous site for the health center that you said will be demolished? The building will be demolished?
Yeah, it's the temporary
It's
location.
temporary.
It's what was originally an ROTC building. It's almost like a Butler building. And it's been sort of a mixed occupancy since then.
And in the future, what might it be, or would you come forward as a,
The building
go.
would be demolished and would be part of Greenscape between the renovations we're going to do to the rear of the science building and the library. And right beside it, hopefully will come that new pedestrian footbridge.
thank you.
I have a question. You said that in terms of accessibility, and this is mostly curiosity, is there going to be a sidewalk in front of this building on that side of the street?
It's
On
right,
same,
it's across the street. The
so
existing.
the side,
it's
yeah,
across
I
the
know,
street.
but is there going to,
No, there's not room.
okay. That's what it looked like in the picture. Okay, or if there are no more questions, then we will ask you to sit down and we'll open it up for public comment. If any members of the public would like to make a comment, you're welcome to come up. Okay, and I'll close public comment and open it up for commission discussion. Does anyone down at that end of the dais have any questions, comments, concerns?
I don't really. I think it looks like
Okay.
a beautiful building and I think it's in the right place. I don't have any problem with it at all.
Okay,
Yeah, I think given that it's in the center of campus and it's really within the university's purview to not do what it wants, but
Right.
to have flexibility in what it
sure.
wants to do there. So
Okay, then I guess I need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve the conditional use permit number CUP 2024-01 to allow a health and counseling center on the west side of East Denny Circle across from the Woods Creek Apartments.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. And I think we will invite the commission members who stepped away to come back. Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chair in charge of vice. So the third order of new business is the review of the draft planning commission annual report. And I remember the first time that I was chair and I saw that there was a report and I thought, "Well, I don't know how to do a report." And I realized I don't actually write the report. Put my name on it. So there's my name on it, message from the chair. So, Arnie, would you like to say anything about it or should we?
Just simply, this is a draft that we put together, very similar to the previous years. We do update it as much as we can. And in case we've forgotten something, or if you had some other statement or that you would want it included, that's why we're providing it to you this evening for review. And this will be provided by the chair to city council at their second meeting in January.
Arnie, as I mentioned to you in an email, this is the best annual report in my 7 years on the commission. It's succinct, it tells what we did, and it says what we plan to do in the future, which is appreciated. Now, I think you all agreed that there's a matrix, the matrix will be attached to that of the, is that right? This? Yeah. Yeah, well, because I don't have my, okay, that's great. Yeah, no, that's.
Just page through page 37. That's what I wasn't clear on. It just,
Correct. We
Just through
didn't put
there,
a
okay, yeah.
separation between 37 and the rest of the, correct. So
Right.
through 37 will be part of the annual report.
I'm getting really good at getting people to do my homework for me. So this is, and any other, comments or?
excellent work, Pat.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
Arnie and Kate, it looks wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
It's a great job.
Yep.
And so I haven't done this a couple years. I go to the meeting and I don't necessarily read this whole thing, right? I just kind of give the highlights, right? or
You get to do what you
whatever
like
you want
to
to.
do.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
and then there'll be a few questions and hopefully a couple of attaboys and you'll be out.
Okay, good. So is there anything anybody would like to see added? Anything that, I think it gives a good account of what we've been up to and,
Yeah, and you might just highlight, explain a little bit why we included this,
yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, good. All right. Okay. No public comment needed on that. And then, so we will move on to item 6, which is other business, which is the zoning and planning report, if applicable. If you have anything, Arnie.
I do. We're working on several code amendments in our department. One's about nuisance and debris stored in the yard, and others about unapproved and installed subdivision entrance signs. Another one is more about 3 unrelated people in a dwelling unit. And then the last one to mention is a short-term rental that's exceeding, or it's not being operated as it should. I'll just leave it at that. Just to make you aware, sometimes we are fairly involved in enforcement. The burned out structure at 201 North Randolph that has been unsightly the entire time I've been here has been demolished and is now mostly on the ground. Hasn't been completely removed yet, but they're in the process of doing that. We held the first management team meeting for the CDBG planning grant that was received to conduct a windshield survey citywide to assess housing conditions. I think I may have mentioned that. But
Yes.
this is more of a from threshold for that from the Housing Commission, but just to make you all aware, we did receive a grant that will allow us to hire a contractor to do a windshield survey, which means they actually drive around or they actually walk around, their choice, and take a look at everybody's house from the outside, not asking to go inside, and just to get an overall assessment of the condition of the houses. And that will be helpful if council wants to perhaps go after other grant funds or even use city funds to do some rehab work around the city. It will help them target where that could occur. And also, in order for me to maintain my certified zoning administrator certification, I attended 2 days of training last week in Charlottesville with the Virginia Association of Zoning Officials. Also attended a city council work session regarding the building assessment and feasibility study for City Hall, where improvements are needed. But there is an effort by city council to review with the assessment and see what could possibly be done with City Hall improvements. And the city council is still considering the ADU recommendation that you made. Happy to answer any questions.
What are the issues for the council on the ADU?
It came up during their public hearing, more detail on if the primary resident is in the main unit, then they're not occupying the accessory dwelling unit. So can they rent out as a short-term rental the accessory, because again, they're not the primary occupant. So it was parsing down much more narrowly than what we had discussed here, who's living in which unit and who can be issued a registration for short-term rental, and then how even down to type A and type B. So if you're not living in the accessory, could you do type B, but maybe not be allowed to do type A? So there are some details that need to be worked out. Fair assessment?
Yeah, that sounds good. And it could end up being different for type A versus type
Mhm.
B. I mean, sorry, not for type A versus B. It can be different for attached versus detached.
Right.
Just because I think it's important that we not make it more narrow than how we're already doing it. And so we'll need some information if somebody's renting less than 2 bedrooms, but they're in an apartment, an attached apartment. Are we allowing them to do a type A rental if they're in the main structure in the other primary dwelling unit?
Right.
So
So details, just
Details.
further details.
I guess the other two big items, and I can wait till city council report, but the other two big items on the ADU, well, they're not big. One is on the meters, just
Mhm.
specifically the water meter. Should we require a water meter? We said no to keep it less expensive. The city manager's recommending that, yes, we should include it. In part because so they know how much water they're using, but we also require, we charge for a minimum water usage. So if that building's not metered, they're being treated differently than every other dwelling in town. So that'll be something we discuss. And then one council member brought up that he'd like to see we allow 4 people in the
Right. Yeah.
ADU. So we'll probably talk about that as well.
And that stays away from us. That's
Yeah, right. I mean, everything, all the big stuff looks good. It's
Yeah,
just getting
yeah.
down to these nitty gritty
Yeah.
details.
Okay.
Well, it's complicated
Mhm.
zoning and having another set of eyes from
Yeah.
council is good.
Have fun.
Thanks.
Let us know how it goes.
You guys did the hard work. This is just little bitty details we've
Okay.
got to work out.
All right. Thanks, Arnie. So let's see. We are on to key annual PC milestones, ongoing remaining items. So how are we proceeding here? What do we need to talk about here? Are we going to continue a bit our conversation from the 9th? Is there anything under cottage housing or anything that needs to be said there?
No, maybe that'll be the lead in the sense that what we talked about last time was what is on your program for the next year.
Right.
And cottage housing, because that's one of the remaining items under this heading of key annual PC milestones. I'll just start with that. So what we had committed to doing in the next year is the quick comp plan amendment for that one map for that kind of intruded into Maple Lane, the single family houses that we have there for an opportunity zone or opportunity area. Opportunity zone is something different. So just to take those houses out, because we don't want those to be necessarily developed or people to think that they can purchase those houses, tear them down and do something else with that property. And then the other amendment, which is in front of our council or our attorney at the moment, is an amendment to the subdivision ordinance so that boundary line adjustments, property line vacations don't have to go all the way to city council. Those are ministerial and in my opinion, they shouldn't be going that far. So perhaps the proposal is to amend the subdivision ordinance so some of those things become more an administrative function, and then maybe even a look at some of the other items that are going all the way to council. Maybe they just come here to the planning commission and get approved. Because again, they're all ministerial once we get to the subdivision ordinance. So those 2 amendments. And then cottage housing is going to be another big thing. Even if Max doesn't submit something, it's still on our agenda. It's left over actually from the last round of annual amendments. And then the 4th thing, which escapes me at the moment, but I know there's number 4, Kate. Oh, batch A, of course, batch A. Zoning amendments, the ones that we read through, confused the heck out of most of y'all perhaps about what we're talking about. But the next round of zoning amendment, text amendments, and we're going to batch them up in batch A. And then cottage housing is batch B because it's just going to be a bigger thing. And the sort of a B2 is the sense that when we were talking about, when we had the discussion at your last meeting on the 9th, it also seemed that one of the items that was going to come out of that is going through your entrance corridor design criteria to beef those up. So that's going to be another not quick thing for batch A. I think that's going to be another more in-depth things. So those are really 5 things that are being committed to for your work program for next year. And then we're still going through, and John's provided an update here starting on page 38 of what was provided by him on the last meeting, but there's a slightly updated format here. And I think the very last page is also perhaps new to you.
And I think it's a great idea. Well, you guys put it into the annual report, so that's very helpful.
So is there anything anyone wants to add, say, expand upon?
I think that's plenty.
Yeah.
And the other issues that I brought up, are not necessarily have to be done within this year. I was flagging things that are coming up
Right.
down the road in terms of the comp plan. So the only one that I wish we were a bit more proactive on is including bike and sidewalks into having a little bit more of a plan the way we do it, rather than just saying, well, we have $30,000 left over from Public Works discretionary money and we're going to do 100 linear feet. Could we be a bit more proactive and discuss it within the commission and council as to where the priorities are for the next year and the year after? It usually comes as an afterthought rather than us. I mean, the thought I had was we sometimes spend as much time on a sign, but we don't really talk about what our plans are for that. So that's just something to think about.
And would that be added to this list? So that would become number 6? Is that what that looks like?
I would let Arnie think about it because
Yes.
he's got a load already. But
As I mentioned last time, if there's anything above the 5, which was 4 last time, but it's really now 5, I'm going to have to get, I'm going to check with the boss for some approval, because we're starting to get to a point where I'm not so sure that we can accomplish all those things next year.
Yeah.
Quite honestly.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that cottage housing isn't going to take quite as long as what we went through with accessory dwelling units. But if we think of that, and then we're also going to go through somewhat thoroughly through the design criteria for entrance corridors, those are 2 pretty big things.
Yeah.
And the other things are more minor, and I think we can handle that in addition to whatever the applications are that we get throughout the year.
And if we, for some reason, are stunningly fast at getting through these, we can always add this in at the end, right?
Certainly.
Yeah. You haven't been on here very long. You look back at how long chickens took. You just take a look back at that and we'll see that. But anyway, yes, exactly. So yeah, and I think as John said, this is kind of back burner, back of our heads, and then think about it, right? Okay. Major project update, is that what we just what does that mean? Is that what we were just talking about?
Oh, there was anything else that's sort of going on, like
Yeah.
the 201 North Randolph, sort of major project, just
Yeah.
to mention that
Right.
it's been torn down,
Okay.
that type of.
All right, good.
Pat, can I just talk for a moment to this?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Under comp plan review.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you,
You all have a little note that I wrote up. I told Arnie I might do a presentation, then I just wrote some notes today for myself. I think, I'm sorry I couldn't be here for the meeting. I was attending a funeral up in Northern Virginia and I just couldn't make it back. Ironically, it was the first person who I met out of undergraduate school that kind of convinced me to go into city planning. So it was a sad day for me. Arnie correctly pointed out in the introduction to that section, and it's in the minutes, going over our bylaws. And anybody who's gone to the planning commission course, the first thing Mike Chandler asks you for is to bring in your bylaws. And this year we did update our bylaws, the purpose statements. And you'll notice there under the maintenance of the comprehensive plan, we have make recommendations to city council on revisions and updates. So I'm just pointing that out, and we can have a debate about it in the future, a discussion, not necessarily a debate, but what is our role in doing that? And then the second piece there on number 2, comprehensive plan updating. I was taking an online course, and someone in the course mentioned a quote from Mike Chandler, who said the comprehensive plan is not self-implementing. I think it's, and so I went back and looked at our history, because as Leslie appropriately pointed out, well, wait a minute, we still have time before the update is due. So the council adopted the plan in November of 2020. So if we, and just for those of you who were not involved, actually Pat and I are the two left who were involved. It officially started in March of 2018 with a workshop. But I know I found emails going back to January of that year. So it's at least 3 years that we worked on the plan. And so we're now in our 4th year, starting our 4th year. I don't think it'll take 3 years to do an update. But I think what we've started to do is to have a discussion of how do we monitor and update the plan, so that when you get to the 5-year mark, you're not cramming it into the last 6 months of before the time is due. And it's also, I mean, I come to this with lots of years of advising local governments on urban planning issues. It's how you keep your plan timely and relevant. So I think, anyway, that I just wanted to make that overall point for everybody, and especially think about the fact that Pat, I don't know if he's going to re-up, but by the time if Pat and I don't re-up, you will all be facing the update on your own for the first time. And it helps to have gone through the process. So, so doing some things before Pat leaves is highly recommended. And then, so that's that. Are there any questions on that or thoughts or what I'm raising? Okay. Under the for consideration priorities, you all did it. Again, the minutes were really reflect a good discussion. I think that I was just trying to raise that for South Lexington, given that VDOT is coming in, that's a really serious kind of catalyst or kickoff event that will occur over the next 4 years. And the question arises about basic things, and I'm not talking about doing a whole plan. It would be almost, if you're doing a planning study, it would be a baseline, and you would say, given the existing zoning, what is the potential density here? And then do we need additional sewer and water? And this is not for the planning commission to do, but the planning commission is kind of the one that watches over the comp plan, can be asking these questions. So excuse me. You don't all know it, but in my hearing aids, my phone was ringing. And I know from a discussion I had with Mr. Algood that in a presentation he sat in on from the MSA about future investments in the sewage, that actually the whole plant is at capacity. So if you look at South Lexington and you look at the potential for multifamily there will be a new load on for sewer and water. We've also talked about sidewalks. And if any of you have ever stood at the Lexington Prescription Center when school gets out, there is a big line of buses trying to make a left turn, and it's a really difficult place to get in and out of. So add in the next 4 years, 200 more units, plus the potential for multifamily that will be of interest to others once VDOT goes. Then you're looking at something do we need a light? Do we need turning lanes? What's going to happen there? So it's an opportunity for us to look at it in a more integrated way. And I'm not saying that the Planning Commission should be doing this. And I think what a reason I was raising it, since council is the one who's been shepherding that whole process, is for council to have a discussion on this, whether or not it's worthwhile looking at a more integrated package of improvements, what will be required over the next 10 years for that area. So thank you for all, that's it.
Thanks, John, for that. And you always appreciate the hard extra work you do to put together your thoughts on some of these on these issues. Does anybody want to follow up or comment on anything?
I do. I want to say that I agree that I am on the second round of the Planning Commission training today and tomorrow. And we were talking today about level of service and sort of like how important it is to plan for development that's coming and to sort of say, okay, are we able to, if we had build out, as you're saying, if we have build out, do we have the capacity to serve these people? And if not, how do we get there? Particularly once something has been approved, I think it's just a very important thing to know and to factor that into the costs and to the planning process. So I think this is all very important stuff to consider and to engage, for council to engage for sure, as well.
We've already been working on this.
Yeah,
the city
yeah.
Staff has been working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
No, I'm just
with you.
agreeing and because I think it is so important. So thanks.
But Leslie, I that's good to hear, and I've heard it from other counselors. I think my sense is the focus has been appropriately on the VDOT parcel. But I haven't seen anything that looked at the larger district. What is required for the larger area in terms of even the basics. And when I've talked to people, including the mayor, he said, well, I don't really I've heard different things. So someone needs to be looking at this. That's all. Just it's basic planning 101. We primarily look at zoning. But the whole idea of what else is required there, and then is what you're proposing, is that known to the public? Or is it just something that's being worked out piecemeal with good thoughts, but not necessarily in an integrated fashion? So that's why I would encourage a more holistic, integrated view of what can happen in that district, in that area. Because we're laying the foundation for the major growth area of Lexington and in the next 15, 20 years.
I know we say that, but it is all built out other than VDOT. There's one parcel across the street on a hill.
Which is.
But everything else is
Yeah,
built
but
out.
some of those other big pieces may change, and we can't predict what that change would be, nor
Right.
should we.
Right.
But we could say if the question would be, I would have, it's the one I posed, if you took the maximum build out based on the existing zoning, do we have enough sewer, water, and transport capacity? That's all. Answer those three questions. And I'm not talking tree canopy, not talking bike paths yet. Just those basic things. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I think that brings us to city council report, and you already had some things to say. What else do we have,
Yeah.
Leslie?
So we've been busy. So last Tuesday, we had a joint meeting with the county and the MSA to get an update on needed upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. Then last Thursday, we had a city council work session on our annual audit presentation. And then we discussed one location for a dog park. The idea was not to talk about other locations, just this one. And so it was presented. And then we had our regular city council meeting. And as Arnie said, the discussion on ADUs was put off so that since the city attorney wasn't there and gave council some time to think about some of these issues. At our next meeting, I believe it'll be on the agenda and we'll discuss it and probably give some direction to the city attorney to come up with language. And so I imagine we will probably finally have continued public hearing and vote on this, hopefully sometime at one of our 2 meetings in January. We did have the PUD application from Max Mark Homes, and as Arnie has said, that street is already one way, and so we were able to approve that. And that was it. And then, like Arnie said, I've lost track of days. Tuesday we talked about City Hall upgrades. Our City Hall is in need of renovation. It's been put off for years and it's time to address it. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Where's the dog park? The
Good
potential.
question. So the suggested location is off of Highway 11 between there and McCorkle Drive. It's city-owned property. There's some water lines underneath, but so if you're heading south on 11, as soon as there's a city limits sign, and once you pass that on the right hand side, there's an area without trees. So it could be some piece of that area right off of McCorkle Drive that you can see from 11. We could just fence it in basically. But there's no sidewalks there to walk there. We would add some parking spots. I mean, there's plenty of land, but is that a good location for it? Will it be used? Will the neighbors be upset with that? So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In Lexington, it's probably usually best just to say whose house it's next to, and then we'll all be able to picture it better.
Right, yeah, right.
Yeah. Who lives near us? So, oh yeah, okay, I know where that is.
I can't picture that either.
Yeah,
I can't picture where you're talking about.
Right.
South 11, South 11 or North 11?
Yeah, the bypass.
Oh,
Yeah. Right along, you know how McCorkle
oh,
runs
yes. Okay,
around
yeah.
along it, sorry. And then you have the nice strip of land that the
Right.
city just owns
Right.
but it's slope land. It's not
Yeah.
flat and
Right.
and we wouldn't take down trees. It's the one section that doesn't have trees, but
Okay.
But if it's sloped. I can just imagine a mud pit in the rain.
yeah, it drains actually pretty well because it's a one big hill.
Right, but I'm just thinking about dogs running around.
Yeah.
A lot of dogs.
I try not to
end
picture
up
that.
with a lot of grass.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Unless you all want to sit here in amiable silence for the rest of the evening,
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.